We unfortunately can't show you the video because of the flagrant middle finger in it, but Bolsonaro, Jair Bolsonaro, president of Brazil, recently got on a plane and the reception was spicy. Jeers and taunting, middle fingers, calling him a purveyor of genocide. And that's just trying to get on a phone or on a plane. I know, we've all been there. Anyway, he had to say about that heckling, those people saying get out Bolsonaro should be traveling by donkey. So, he's a nice guy. He's a nice guy. Anyway, he is up to a lot of really shady stuff in Brazil. Especially recently when it comes to investigations of people critical of him in media, even like independent people like YouTubers and things like that. And a lot of it probably has to do with the fact that coming up in a year, there's going to be an election in Brazil. And right now, it's not looking great for him. The former president, Lula da Silva, his main rival, appears to be strengthening his lead. Neither man has actually announced their candidacy, but it's expected that both are gonna run. And right now, in one recent poll that I found, Lula's lead is fairly significant over Bolsonaro. But let's bear in mind, that only really matters if you have an election, and if the election counts, and if you win in the election, you're allowed to actually take control of power. And that is where the concern starts to come in. I'm gonna give you some examples of why people might need to be concerned, but Francesca, I wanted to give you an opportunity. What'd you think about this? We haven't talked about Brazil, you and I, for a bit.
No, I mean, I think what's interesting about this moment for Bolsonaro is that he really had a lot of backing from Trump, and the idea of the sort of little authoritarian rat pack that got together and supported one another, and that's changing around the world. And him losing, I mean, Trump losing the White House, Bolsonaro lost an ally, right? And they could sort of deny science together as they oversaw massive amounts of death and the spread of COVID, which they denied and downplayed for months. And similarly, and now I think these moves that he's making towards even more authoritarianism, a lot of people are saying that's a move of desperation because he knows he's gonna lose. But exactly right. I mean, I wouldn't put it past Bolsonaro to try and stay in power. Honestly, if I were Lula da Silva, I would not want to inherit a Bolsonaro like presidency and a country. But that being said, I also think that, in the same way that Biden thought he was the only one to be able to emerge out of the Trump era, maybe Lula da Silva is similarly the one who's got the most popularity and name recognition who could actually boot Bolsonaro out.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about what might be inherited. As of right now, 490,000 people officially have been reported to have already died during the pandemic in Brazil. On Saturday, the Brazil's health ministry reported over 2,000 deaths just for that day. So yeah, that's not looking good. And I can understand, like with Trump, these sorts of situations could severely hurt your chances of getting reelected. So maybe you want to have a plan B. And so let's talk about a little bit of that. Appearing alongside thousands of motorcycle riding supporters in Sao Paulo, the far-right former army captain said the country's state military police forces serve as a support to what he dubbed "my army," saying, quote, "You are auxiliary to the armed forces. I'm sure that in compliance with law and order, by complying with constitutional provisions, we will be together, whatever happens." That's kind of terrifying. And yeah, meeting up with a bunch of people on motorcycles is yet another Trumpian little move that he's got there. Bear in mind with his relationship with the police, Bolsonaro in office, he has sought to boost legal protections for police who kill on the job, saying criminals should, quote, "die like cockroaches," which is not super new. I mean, he's been talking about the need for the state to kill more people for a long time. Back in 2016, he said that the former military dictatorship, the mistake of them was that they tortured and didn't kill. First of all, fact check, they killed a lot of people. He thinks they should have killed more. And as I alluded to, critics of the president, from indigenous leaders to YouTubers, activists to journalists, opposition politicians, have been investigated under the dictatorship era national security law. So there's a lot of concern about that, particularly against the media. He told a reporter last year, "I'd like to punch you in the mouth, you bitch." I think that might be bastard. But it's bad either way, and those are two of the words I'm actually allowed to say on the show. That's fun. Yeah, he's been saying that. We have one more wrinkle on this, but Francesca, what do you think about the possibility that he might be trying to get forces together for some sort of rejection of election results?
I mean, yeah, and this is the way things come down, whether the police and the military will be on the side of the government or not. I mean, this is sad to say. We've seen it across the world, and we basically saw it in this country on January 6th, where a lot of former military and police officers were part of the insurrection. And I think there was that moment. I mean, look, had Trump not said that those who die at war are suckers and losers, maybe more of the military would have been behind him. But again, we've got the stupid version of a dictator. Maybe Bolsonaro is smarter / scarier. But this article from The Intercept that I think you're citing, begins with police officers in a northern province of Recife, or I believe a state in Recife, like blinding an elderly person with a rubber bullet. And apparently not because they wanted to, but because they're under orders from Bolsonaro. So that means that, like, again, even local and state police are following his orders. One wonders in a year if they're gonna still be doing that. And look, Bolsonaro's also rejected some of the vaccine. I know that's a huge part of it. And look, no matter what,
you just have to be strong.
Exactly, you just have to be strong. And I do think, like, for better or worse, and in this case, I think for better, and in our case for better, the COVID-19 really politicized like your strongmen, expose the weaknesses of your strongmen, which is you can't just be strong in the face of COVID-19, it can still kill you, oh my God. And when rubber hits the road and we need someone who believes in science, these strongmen aren't there for us. So, yeah.
We have very little time, but I want to give you one added little thing, about the upcoming election. He is saying if they don't switch over entirely to just paper ballots, he's not going to accept the results. Which, look, I would prefer a paper trail too, but I don't think that's why he's doing it. And bear in mind, you talked about the relationship with the Trumps. His son was in Washington, D.C. and met with members of the Trump family and inner circle before, during, and after the Capitol insurrection, and had this to say about the insurrection. It was a disorganized movement. It was unfortunate. Nobody wanted this to happen. If it were organized, they would have taken over the Capitol and made demands that the invading group established in advance. They would have had minimal military power to not kill anyone, kill all the police inside or the members of Congress that they hate so much. When the right becomes 10% of the left, we are going to have civil war in all Western countries. So cool family you got there. And yeah, a little bit worried about what's gonna happen in the run up to this election.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.